So do we want to keep going through RFCs? Should I share this document? Or should we turn our attention to
that Dropbox paper link you just posted leads to a 404.
Let me edit it. I don't understand why. But yeah, or you can use the other. Oh, somehow I appended a character to the URL, it seems. Okay.
So you did. Yes, if I delete the last character, it loads.
Okay. So we were going through the RFCs before, and we could keep doing that. And we never actually took action, but that's okay. I think I was thinking we should get a little farther before we start posting comments. But I don't want to wait forever. I guess let's do that. Oh, wait. Man, there's 3 pages of these things? Good Lord. Okay. So we were up to, why do I feel like I guess eager macro expansion. It seems like some of these things, I guess there were some that were T-compiler and T-lang, and we didn't look at those before. That's okay. Oh no, we did. Never mind.
I think we were working our way backward.
No, we just got farther than I expected. I think that's all. So we're at RFC delegation, I think.
Which one? Sorry.
Oh,
I see. Sorry. Second page.
Yep.
Did we already talk about inherent trait?
We did.
Oh, we did. Yes, we did.
I think we're up to delegation or 2393. So this was right. I think we even requested this be written, if I recall.
I think we did, yes.
And then we failed to act on it, which is a shame. So there's, I don't know, looking past the details, this is definitely something that has arisen a fair amount.
Is delegate still a keyword that we just aren't using yet?
I don't think we reserved it, did we? I don't know.
I think that will affect how painful this is. That's why I'm asking. Apparently, it is not a keyword now.
Not a keyword, although I think that it may be contextual. Like, if it's
yeah, it should be easy enough to do with context, yes.
But I think that's almost too in the weeds.
Yeah, no, this seems very reasonable. I mean, there's syntax bike shedding that could be done, but I think the important question is, do we still want this? And is this vaguely the right approach? I think the answer to both questions is yes.
Probably the RFC, I'm going to guess, let's see, has some strong examples of motivation. And one of them is pushing down to subfield. I think there are a few like known problems. Actually, it doesn't spend as much time identifying those as I might have thought, but or it focuses on this one, which is not the one that I encounter the most. maybe I encounter it a lot. So in particular, I think there's delegating to a field. There's also like forwarding methods from a trait. So if we go back up, we talked about inherent trait implementation, right? And delegation kind of also solves that problem potentially in a different way, where you say, I define the methods on the trait, but I implement them by reusing inherent methods or vice versa. But I guess we talked about how that seems like a less good solution or something.
Yeah, I think that while that's technically possible, the idea of having two implementations, one of which is a delegation, seems less optimal than just saying you're allowed to call this trait function on this type without having to import the trait.
So we said our recommended next step options were either close because it doesn't fit our priorities, suggest, oh my God, I have to stop this, people from writing, stop file a length team MCP, or try to merge, right?
Right. I mean, if we think that this needs substantial additional work, then I do think an MCP makes sense here. However, I just read through the entire article, right? Sense here. However, the instinct is frankly to FCP merge. I'm not actually seeing any substantial problems with it.
Right. So I think that the design is probably roughly right, and it went through already an extensive internals process. However, I have some concerns. Like, it's a large implementation effort, I think. Um, it's a stale, sort of a stale community, so to speak. Like,
Right.
there was a lot of action, but now it's old. And actually not sure how large the implementation effort is. It might not be so bad. It's all upfront, but it's definitely non-trivial. It's not small. So we can say medium to large. Uh,
Right.
I suspect we could revive that community, but I guess what I'm saying is I would be hesitant to merge until we, not because of the design, but because like more of the project management side of this, like, is this a project we want to take on now? And will we have the energy to see it through and so forth?
Right.
And how does it, what is it, in what way does it fit our priorities of closing, of finishing up old work? And it
Right.
seems like it doesn't.
Well, we've talked about having it for a while, and there's one specific thing that I think makes it reasonable to consider. This isn't actually the kind of thing that touches every piece of the language. This is something that has a desugaring, and the RFC more or less defines the desugaring, and it is defined as having a function that delegates to another field's function. And because it has such an obvious desugaring, it feels like any implementation of it will be largely orthogonal to most other things.
I'm having some bandwidth these sort of problems. I'm going to try to stop video trick and see if that helps. Honestly, I think like Dropbox paper might take up a lot of my CPU or something.
Yeah, you're flanging a little.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear there's static, though.
What's going on? is kind of dying, it appears.
We can try switching the screen share. I can share mine instead.
Okay, let's try that. Okay. Well, I think it's not. I think you're not wrong that it's somewhat orthogonal. I still am. I wouldn't be ready to jump forward. I'd want to at least talk it over.
We could absolutely like poke the thread and say, we talked this over. We think this might be, despite the time lag, something that we're interested in merging. Here's some minor notes, and are people still around and interested in seeing this merged and willing to do implementation work?
Let me talk about this a different way. I feel like we should be having. We've talked about bandwidth per person, but I also think there's a separate kind of bandwidth we should be monitoring of like size and size of effort that is in flight. And just having too many big things in flight, like major additions to the language and so on, seems suboptimal. So I don't know. I'm just a little. That's more the perspective I'm coming at of like we can poke the thread and definitely say we're still interested, but I would also want to see what we see with the other things. So maybe we should move to those other things and come back. But basically coming back to, are we just opening up a new area of work for us rather than closing down areas of work? It seems like yes, but.
I mean, in general, I think most RFCs on this list are likely to be opening new areas of work rather than closing previous things, unless they're things we're already working on. So if we don't feel like we have the bandwidth to do new things right now, I think that the answer to almost all of these is going to be not right now, and I'm not sure that's where we want to be.
Well, I think I feel differently about relatively small additions, I guess.
I guess this feels like a relatively small addition. Anyway,
fair enough.
Moving on to 2442 for the moment. So this one's mine, and I opened this because I felt like it would answer a lot of different things that were going on at the time. It also interacted with await syntax, which has now been resolved, so that's no longer applicable. There are still a lot of use cases for being able to there's still a lot of use cases for postfix macros, and I still regularly see people talking about things on internals for which this would be a good solution. As far as I can tell, the main point of contention on the language team is whether it's acceptable to have something that kind of sidesteps name resolution entirely and just says, my macro name is this, so I'm going to go look it up and apply it to this expression. Or do we somehow have type level macro dispatch, which is in the territory of people have done PhDs on this. And I feel like, in my opinion, there's enough value to this to make it worthwhile to do the lexical dispatch and to offer that as an option. And that doesn't stop us from doing type-based dispatch in the future if we offered a new kind of postfix macro. But I think there's enough value in this and in particular, enough value for the ability to experiment with interesting new syntax, like let's see what dot match would look like, or what dot if would look like, or dot for would look like, and be able to experiment with that. I think there's value in that. And there was dispute on the language team. I know Boats in particular felt like if we can't do this with full type-based dispatch, and I want to make sure that opinion is represented even though Boats isn't here. So that's the rough point of contention. I'm still interested in this. If somebody were willing to do the implementation on this, I'd be willing to serve as a liaison for it. I don't know what the right next step would be. And I'm not quite sure how to resolve the point of contention.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment of the main point of contention. I don't know. I think I would feel
Minor thing worth noting, I will fix this in the Dropbox paper notes, but it's not quite rewrite one to the other. It's more you can explicitly declare a macro as being postfix, and it will be kind of treated this way.
okay. Yeah, I was just guessing. That's good to know, though. So I'm inclined to say that this is not FCP merge. It's probably, it could be considered an MCP. Like, we can have the discussion that if we wanted to, you know, about which approach we have and if there's a middle ground. I mean, one way to go forward might be kind of sketching what it would be like if we had both. But I don't know that we would want both. I guess the question is, would we ever really want type-based macro dispatch?
Right.
Be good
And I feel like that's the kind of thing that is on par with let's introduce references and lifetimes in terms of impact on a language.
Potentially.
Just in terms of sheer complexity to implement throughout the compiler.
It would be a massive change to our current compiler structure.
Right. So yeah, when this was pitched, the concept of MCP didn't exist. I absolutely agree this should not just be FCP merged in its current form. I think that it would make sense to file this as an MCP, and I would be willing to file this as an MCP. I think the big question I would ask is, does this seem like the kind of thing that would be acceptable as an MCP, or would I file an MCP and then a month or two from now we say, and this isn't on our roadmap, so no?
Yes, that is the question. I think that like delegation, I don't know if I think it's on it. I guess I think this is probably isn't that big a change in the implementation sense if we take this lexical rewrite approach. I think it's worth having a discussion. I'm a little bit interested in how we're going to have this discussion. I suspect, here's my hunch. My hunch is that the right time to pursue this is more like early. I wanted to say early next year, but maybe that's not right. I don't know. I feel like there should be some time where we think about larger impact on user sort of changes that are going to change how Rust feels. And not just as they come up, but I'm not sure. In any case, I think it would be, I would like to have the discussion, but I'm not sure exactly the best way for us to have it. And I don't know what I think the outcome would be because I could definitely see a work. I think I've previously been in favor of type-based dispatch also, but I think I'm now in the, I'm not in a camp yet, but I see the appeal of like, okay, that does sound cool, but we have to wait. We're gonna have to wait for years to ever, I may never really do that. But we could do this today, and there's a lot of stuff people want to do with it, and it would mostly work just fine. And I think that's probably true. But I feel like I would like to see a little discussion of what, like investigation of what type-based dispatch might look like and so on. So. What are we giving up? I think it's
Right.
Scala, but I'm not sure. I forget how Scala macros work. So I would not give it a super high. I guess I would. I don't know the outcome, is the truth. But I think it's not like a slam dunk by any means. How's that?
I'm just trying to make sure that you don't already feel the answer is no. If you feel the answer is let's talk about it, then I am happy to file an MCP. So let's treat that one as an action item for me to file the MCP.
Okay. I definitely feel like I see people talk about it. I have this intuition that if we did add this, like procedural macros, it will be used quite a lot. But
I think it's likely. I will say this. I absolutely think it should stay nightly only with a feature flag for quite some time, not just because of how it interacts with other bits of the language and whether the feature itself was stable, but because a critical part of this is let's see how people in the ecosystem make use of it. And if what we see looks really interesting, that may be compelling. And if what we see is really horrifying, we might want to say, you know what? Nope. I am hopeful that we will see really interesting things from it, but I do think we'd want to give the ecosystem like 6 to 12 months to play with it before considering stabilization. Personally, the very first thing I'm going to do with it is create .match.
I don't know if that would be allowed because of the keyword, but or maybe
Yeah, .match underscore would not be hard.
So hygiene opt out for declarative macros 2.0. I think we probably just want to close this. And
Every time I see one of these, I always am like, we have macros 2.0?
yeah, not really. That's kind of why I think we probably want to just close it and.
Right. Yeah, if macros 2.0 is still baking, then I think it makes sense to just say we should have a bring macros 2.0 over the finish line MCP and have this be one of a dozen things they look at. But maybe somebody could file an MCP for let's get macros 2.0 over the finish line. Can we maybe poke this community and say, hey, would you be willing to do this?
Maybe. So teach concat to join byte, join slices. This feels more libs than lang, but I guess this is like.
I think concat is built in.
Right.
There was a bunch of discussion on this. I remember because I was in that discussion, and I think one of the big points of dispute on this one is should concat do this, or should we have a concat bytes that does this so that it's type safe? I very much argued we shouldn't have concat like do different things based on its arguments. We should have two different types. But otherwise, I think it's perfectly fine to have a thing that does this.
Okay. So
I just don't want to have an I accidentally a byte string problem.
I feel like this would be the kind of thing where the Lang team is probably mostly limited to saying we approve of the sort of, we're okay with using built-in macros for these purposes, but let the libs team settle the details of whether they have one or two macros and what arguments they take and so forth. But like, if they weren't built in, it would be clearly out of our hands, right?
Right, that's very obvious, yes. I would be happy to file a quick comment on this one, basically saying we're generally in favor. We'd like to see something do this. The fact that this is built in puts it under Lang. We'd be happy to delegate it back to libs, despite it being a built-in macro.
Yeah, that's what I think. Okay, permit underscore in type aliases.
Is this the one I think it is?
I don't think I ever saw this RC before.
I don't think I did either. This is not the one I thought it was.
So
What? What? Is this like global type inference?
it's probably the same scope one would use for infiltrate, I would assume. But the type leaks.
The same scope for that, but except there is no declaration of what the trait it's implementing is.
Yeah, because the type leaks. So you know you get the concrete type and not the as it states here, you get the minimum.
I see. Yeah, reading the section on better naming of unnameable types, it sounds like this is effectively type alias impl trait without having to name all the traits and instead just having the compiler infer them. That seems like global type inference, and my first instinct is to say we really don't want this.
I think we should. This should
Am
be.
I missing something?
I think this should be deferred until infiltrate in these positions is stable and working, because it's
That
gonna,
seems like a reasonable response, yeah.
And one thing I will say is that, somewhat unrelated, but for the specific, I would really like it if one could write, if one could just omit the type item equals something. At least I think I would like that. I haven't fully made up my mind, but such that it gets inferred like, because this method returns a self item, you're allowed to, you don't have to like repeat yourself. The main reason I think I would like that is that it ties into, well, just because it seems like repeating yourself. So it's related to this RC, but different because it could be a much more limited special purpose feature if we ever did want it. Anyway, I think this should be maybe a good idea, but we should lay the groundwork first. All right, type changing struct update syntax. So I think what's happening here is that today, when you write through blah, 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 some fields at that bar, the type of this expression is the same as bar today. But maybe you don't want that because maybe bar has some generics like if it was then you would rather that the type of this be independent from the type of bar, so that you could change the value of A. That makes sense. This is probably a no-brainer. It's probably even something that wouldn't require an RFC and could just be done in a PR, unless there's like some horrible problem. I don't see. Seems like almost everyone's in favor. I think this could be merged personally.
It looks like the only open question, at least primary open question on the RFC, is whether you allow changing the struct type as well, or just generics. Like if you can go from struct bar to struct foo, or if it's purely sort of, you have to preserve the same parent type, sort of.
I think that's a reasonable question because this use case sounds completely justified to me, and the idea of change the thing that is dependent on the generic type and keep all the other fields that aren't seems completely reasonable. But changing from one entirely unrelated struct type to another because the fields happen to match, that feels like something where I really expect the compiler to tell me don't do that, because otherwise I might accidentally mix up two types that happen to have the same field name.
I guess I have to read the inference implications. I was kind of hoping that they wouldn't be too serious, but now that I think about it a little more, they might be. And I'm seeing there's a lot of text about this in the RFC. So I take back what I said about this could probably just be a PR. I think an RFC is appropriate. But I suspect that but I guess we can come up with some rules. I'm not a big fan of the idea of, I would definitely want to start with it stays to be the same struct, but
same struct with different generic.
Potentially different generics, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I'm not really sure why. I guess I think I'll have to look at what the inference does. My expectation would be that you make fresh inference variables for all the generics. You assign the type of the fields that were given, and then you assign the types of the fields that came from the struct that you have the dot dot with, like the ones that are not listed explicitly. And that should fully constrain, like that should just be it. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of text here, and I'm not quite sure why. Maybe I'm either overlooking something or this has a more complex idea. But so I would say probably this should be merged, but it needs a review and discussion of the inference details. Well, it doesn't need discussion, but I don't know who's going to do that. Maybe me, probably me. I don't particularly know if I have time or interest to do it, but that would be the question.
Would it be appropriate here to, well, two separate questions. There's the question of whether you have time to be the liaison, and there's the question of who should do the review of type inference details. I'm wondering what the best way to make progress on the latter would be in terms of assigning that to someone.
Which one? Sorry. The inference details?
The latter, the review of type inference details. You said that you would want to review the type inference details before we considered this.
Right. I think I want to do that. I don't think that'll take too long. Like before I clicked my name, I would want to do that.
Okay.
Possibly we could just say move to merge, but then, and I'll register a concern or something.
Would you like me to do that and you can register a concern right now?
Sure.
Okay, done.
Let me register a quick concern. Okay. All right. Hidden trait implementations. 529. So I'm going to take a guess that what this does is lets you declare that a trait implementation is private, which doesn't affect coherence, but does affect who gets to use it for the purpose of proving where clauses and so on. I think the right answer for this is probably this would be a project proposal. I would probably want to defer it until we make progress with chalk integration personally. I don't think it's that high in priority and it'll be cleaner in that context. But
this is not intended for private marker traits. This looks like something else, right?
yeah, I mean, I think the goal is to be able to say, for example, my type implements debug, but you don't get to assume that's true. So I can use debug internally, and I can also just take it away, and it doesn't affect Semver.
I see. So that concept seems like it would be particularly relevant not just for random crates, but for the standard library, in that today trait implementations are insta-stable. And if we had the ability to hide away trait implementations or to affect their visibility, it seems like a small step from there to say this is only visible if you opt into a feature flag.
That sounds plausible, yeah. That's true.
Seems worth documenting that as another benefit.
Okay. Allied array size. Oh, this might be fun.
Yes. This, there have been several variations of this one. I feel like I've filed one of them, and this is another one. And they pretty much boil down to you shouldn't have to count the number of things in your initializer and put that number into the size of your array. You should be able to write underscore and have the compiler say, I'll look at how long your string is, or I will look at how long your slice is.
Right.
And the primary source of contention on this one was effectively, like, I don't think anybody argued we don't want this. There were two major points of contention. One was, will this make it too easy for people to have a public thing in their API that has a size that isn't specified, and then if you happen to change the initializer, the type will change, which means you've just broken Symver. And I believe the right way to solve that problem is for now to just say, hey, you can only infer things that aren't exported, which will still help people hugely for private constants. The other larger point of contention was, should we have this as a special case for array sizes, or should we allow more general type inference, more general const generics, that kind of thing in this context?
Right. As we proceed with the const generics minimal subset, I feel like that's pretty relevant. Like, it's not trying to solve the same problem, but it's definitely stabilizing some of the groundwork for solving this the quote-unquote principled way.
You're suggesting that we should hand this to the min const generics project group as like step 1.5 of that?
Roughly speaking.
Is this directly const generics, or I mean, is the implementation in common? Should we ask one of the const generics experts if this feels like it would be an overlap?
Well, so two things. So first of all, there was some doubt, like there's two different potential contexts. One of them is like so, where we already support underscore, but I think we don't support expressions like that today. We support underscore for types, that is, to say infer the type.
Right. In this context, you can leave out the type completely, but you're not allowed to just infer the length and specify the type.
Yeah, not today. And I could imagine trying to enable that, and that is definitely const generics. And then I'm not sure why it doesn't even parse today. It's a little surprising to me. But then yeah, so there's kind of, if that worked, then I think there's the separate part of, can we allow underscore in constants and static types in the same way? And there are kind of two orthogonal parts. The second part isn't really related to const generics. It doesn't seem to me. It does run into these problems we've hit before of like, well, what about stuff like this? And sorry, not I32.
Right. How does this interact with numeric inference?
Yeah. So I guess I could definitely see an argument for we don't want to support underscore, except in the case of constant expressions. Nonetheless,
yeah,
I think that's how I would expect to implement it.
A more general version in the future, yes.
But I think like it's not only that, but it's like that's how it's hard for me to imagine how we would implement this in the compiler without leveraging const generics. So I think what we would probably do is we would create a const inference variable for that underscore, and we would handle the type, and then read out what value we got. So in that sense, although it's sort of separate from constant generics, implementation-wise, it's definitely tied together. That's why I think it makes sense to at least kind of talk to them about it, because even if we accepted it as a special case, I think that's how we would have to implement it, unless we wanted to write a whole bunch of really hokey code.
So we should talk to folks like Ecstatic Morse and see about how this interacts and see what they think.
Yeah, probably more LCNR, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or Varcore.
Okay, makes sense.
So is that a recommendation? Is kind of, I would say, yeah, coordinate with. I think just with constant generics project group folks to examine implementation feasibility, and I would probably say we should defer until min const generics has made more progress. Like once that, basically until that group is up and going, which is kind of same thing. And then project proposal, probably appropriate. Not even sure if it needs a project proposal, honestly, but maybe it does. It probably. I guess it depends. Like I think if we just enabled underscore inlets, that doesn't really need that's just like I feel like that would be an RFC level decision. Oh, sorry, a PR level decision. Might be an RFC. I don't know. I guess technically it's an expression, not a type position, and that's why. Anyway, I would say recommend project proposal, but especially I don't know that this RFC really talks about the interesting stuff. I definitely think we should do this. Associated type lifetime elision. So I really wanted this thing, but I'm kind of, as you can see here, I remember deciding it's just not worth it. We should close it for now. There's too many weird rules. Like this concern that Aaron raised of here, the elision and ampersand T here refers to this underscore, but this elision refers to that. And this interaction is weird, which is unfortunate. And surprising to people probably, maybe, I don't know. I guess now that I think about it just slightly, I do see some analogous, there's some analogous stuff that happens like when you write self ... you get, it's different, but when you write self this as a struct expression, you get the same type as the impl. But if you write, you know what I mean? You write, like if you have, let me give an example. Struct foo of t. This will always have the type foo of t versus if you wrote this has some inferred detail. There's some subtle distinctions like that, and this is a similar one, where self : item kind of, despite having like this, it's not shorthand for typing those things in the same place. It has a different meaning. So I don't know. I'm somewhat towards close, but because it's kind of like not obvious that this is a win, but could be convinced to also say yes. I think it's consistent and makes sense. Do you know what the proposal is, by the way? I don't know.
I think I'm understanding it from the summary. I don't recall seeing it when it first came out very well, but I get the idea.
Right.
Seems like it got almost no response and just kind of died quickly. Like we talked about it for 5 days and then not again for 2 years.
Yep. I'm kind of just leaning towards defer. Not close and never, just kind of like, this is not a burning, I don't think this is a major ergonomics win for people.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
It's potentially confusing. It's just not. One thing I was thinking, side note, we have this, I would really like it if we take the output from these meetings and I mean, maybe it's just going to be comments in the RFC, but I think it would be nicer if we had, like maybe on the Lang team website, I've always dreamed that for these ideas, we can kind of write up these concerns and thoughts and then link to the RFC like in shorthand form, but so that you can easily remember, wait, what was the major concern with that? Oh, right.
I mean, we could do that in the RFC thread, at least for the time being.
Right, we should start
But
with that.
I agree, it'd be nice.
I think when going through and taking action on this, I would like to, I plan to, on the side, start collecting notes into the Lang team website. We'll see. All right, pointer metadata and vtable. What is this? This is the one that I kind of like, yeah. So I don't remember the details, but I remember I went through and read about the details at some point. Personally, I think I could be in favor of moving to merge on this. I think we had some discussion about it before.
I think I saw something from Ollie like a few days ago that seemed to be a new proposal about this, but I can't find it now.
Oh yeah, interesting.
So I don't know what happened with it. Maybe it was an MCP or something. But it seemed sort of an updated version.
I think we talked about this. If you scroll up, there's a mention of this same RFC earlier in like the previous backlog bonanza.
I moved it down here. We did talk about it, and I suggested merging at the time. And I'm still kind of in favor, but now I'm wondering if, given that Ollie had some alternative, maybe, you know, that was a little hasty, or maybe we should at least ping him. Like a project proposal would be another idea, and I volunteer to serve as liaison in that for that. But guess
That is definitely a danger when we're reviewing old RFCs, is if there's a newer version of the discussion that we're not taking into account.
yeah, I mean, maybe the answer is try to revive this discussion. I mean, let me put it this way. The main reason I wanted to see this go forward is that it's an enabler, and because it seemed like the way Simone was it's interesting. I'm reading Simone's comments here. The 2019 roadmap includes finished long-standing features. I argue resolving a 1.0 tracking error issue fits into that discussion. That actually sounds like a reasonably good case. But basically he was kind of saying, look, I did the work of trying to make the intersection, you know, the forward compatible intersection of, so we don't have to solve the hard problems, but we can solve the easy ones, right? And we should do that. And I agree with that concept. But I think the right thing, I have to reread it now. I remember thinking when I read it last time that it didn't really, you know, it wasn't committing us to much. But
So this does not pin down some portion of the ABI in a way that will constrain us in the future?
maybe the right answer is, I don't know the answer to your question. I don't think so, but I have to reread it. I don't have it fresh enough in my mind. It might be that it committed us to something that I didn't think was a big deal. One option would be to go with a design, like try to organize a design meeting around it as a motivator.
That actually seems like a great idea. Could we get Ollie and possibly Simon to come in and have a conversation about this?
I imagine we could. Hello, person. I don't know who that ding was, but yeah, let's try that. I'll take on that task of organizing that. Let me just put that on my list. It's 2 o'clock. I could go a little more. We're making pretty good progress.
I'd be happy to go at least another half hour to 40 minutes. I need a little time before a meeting in an hour, but not a lot of time.
All right, Mark, how do you feel? Mark's still here.
I'm good to go for another 40 minutes as well.
All right, let's do 30. So next up, RFC structural records. These are like tuples with name fields. Okay. I'm of the opinion that we should not do this. I'm going to put it right out there. Not because I think it's a bad idea, but just because it does, I feel like the problem it solves is not sufficiently burning to grow the language. But at minimum, I think, yeah, so I would definitely not support FCP merge. You know,
I wouldn't support FCP merge either. I do long term feel like this is a thing that we should have, but I also think that this does not like fill in a corner or make the language more orthogonal. This is like on par with the Union RFC in terms of introducing something that will touch everything. And I think we should do it at some point, but not right now.
Unlike Union, I'm not sure if I would say it touches everything. I mean, what like the major difference between the Union RFC and this one is that Union added a new capability.
Right.
Whereas this is
I mean,
like,
technically, you could just desugar this to an anonymous, unnamed type.
yeah, it basically you can either imagine desugaring it to a fresh struct, sort of to a fresh struct declaration, or just to tuples without names, just reordered, right? Um, there is some slight difference in semantics, I imagine, but not much. So actually, it probably does desugar directly to tuples, right? Well, I haven't looked at the RFC in detail, but ordering is probably significant. In other words, I imagine these are not the same type. Because if they were, we have a challenge to figure out what is the canonical representation. But, or maybe they get sorted, but that's, So anyway, my point is it doesn't add a fundamental capability. So union is requiring like unsafe code guidelines interaction, all kinds of interaction, which is fine because we needed that. But this doesn't. This isn't as bad as that in terms of touching everything. But also, by the same token, it's not as important as that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No, it does consider them the same. Well, I don't know how that works, but okay. I'm sure I'm sure it has some thoughts. Anyway, either way. All right, recommendation is close. Anyone dispute that?
Nope. That sounds fine.
Enum variant types.
So there are a lot of variations on this that keep getting discussed time after time after time on both internals and other things. Okay, so this is a different subset of the problem. This one is more interesting. This one actually seems like a great idea to me. It kind of got dropped on the floor at some point, but I personally am hugely in favor of having this available.
I think
There was a
of the
sorry, go on.
I am somewhat skeptical of the interactions with inference. There's a claim that it's going to work out just fine. I'm not sure if I believe that claim. I guess I think I would say recommend for project proposal. This seems like a great starting point. It may be that we want to adopt it wholesale, but I would want to have discussions about it. And
Sure.
I'm not sure
whether. I feel like this. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm not sure whether. One thing I would want to consider in that is inditions and whether like this is something we might phase in across an indition boundary. If there are some ways that we can make inference behave better that wouldn't be strictly backwards compatible. But I'm not sure.
I feel like this is a case where I don't think we should ask for the project proposal because we think the thing needs to be revised further. I think we should ask for a project proposal because we want to ask somebody to commit to shepherding it all the way through the process. Like, be there as the champion of the RFC to talk to the implementer or potentially be the implementer, considering that Varkor was the one to propose it and they certainly know the compiler. So I think we should ask for a project proposal, but not for changes, just for please be the project group. We should charter one.
So that's really interesting. And I agree with you. And I think you gave words to an intuition that I had earlier around delegation, uh, and some of these other projects and some of these other things too, like underscore and type aliases maybe, or even postfix macros, which is kind of like for a change that is sufficiently visible to language users. I think that I wanted to go through the project process, and I want to have us like talk about it freshly and get it. You know what I mean? I don't want to just like take some stale RFC and approve it and then make a tracking issue and call it done. And I would rather that we try to do it in a more healthy way, and have somebody who's going to see it through and so forth. And so, and it might be that that also involves changes to the design, but it might not. In particular, I would like us to be, side note, but you know, I think things like design meetings and so on can be a great way for us to like advertise and help people learn about new exciting things that are coming. But
quick side question here. So we're going through a large number of RFCs. I've taken a little time along the way on 2 or 3 of them to go ahead and write a comment or to do RFC bot, but a lot of these were just making notes here. How do we want to handle the second pass of going back and actually doing all the action items that we're stating?
I was expecting that we would do that once we get to the end of this list. We would probably basically just go through and do them one after the other.
Okay, perfectly reasonable. I just wanted to find out what the plan was.
It seems like something we don't have to do in a group Zoom calls, so it's better to use this time to move quickly through the discussion.
Not a problem. I just wanted to ask.
You might want to bring it up with the team a little before we do, but I'm not too worried because it's always like a merge.
Yeah, there are always checkboxes.
We should discuss it, but nonetheless. Okay, so
a quick. I just wanted to mention before we moved on, there's a quick note about the whole like enums are regularly talked about. The other facet of this that keeps getting talked about, and I feel like there's definitely a we should talk about this as a problem before seeing solutions kind of thing going on. There's been like 3 variants of a discussion on internals about anonymous enums, which basically amounts to I want to return a bunch of different error types or similar, and I don't want to construct a type. I want to just implicitly have the type be the sum type of all the things I return given appropriate names.
Sure.
And I'm not sure if we want this, but regardless, it's a thing that a lot of people seem to feel there's a problem that needs solving. And I think that it's important that we, at the very least, understand the use case and figure out if we want to do this or if there's another solution for the same problem. I just bring it up because there's a lot of internals discussion, and I feel like there hasn't been any serious Lang team discussion of it.
It's true.
And I don't want to end up in another one of those situations of somebody does a ton of work before there is any Lang team feedback.
It does seem like that sort of area where there's sort of a really wide solution space and we're not even sure we want to sort of explore we might want to explore the solution space, but we don't know if we want to identify solutions and implement them, is sort of the exact intent behind project groups.
Exactly.
So maybe it's something where
go on.
It might be like we could try to write up an Inside Rust blog post, basically saying something like the language team is interested in enum variant types, but we are not interested in concrete solutions. We would like someone to open a project proposal with the intent of following through by forming a project group and sort of getting the solution space explored and such.
minor phrasing nit. I think we actually are interested in enum variant types with the specific proposed solution here, but the anonymous enums are the ones where it's like, yes, we'd like to talk about this at a problem in the problem space rather than the solution space.
Sure.
I think this idea of soliciting groups is a good one that we haven't quite figured out the best way to do. I do think Into Rest blog post is probably part of it. I was wondering, were either of you around for the virtual struct design discussions?
I'm not remembering it.
Pretty old.
I don't think so.
So a long time back, we were like one of the first RCs was to add something we called virtual struct at the time, which was not popular. And then it was kind of an attempt to make you able to model like the DOM essentially more efficiently in Rust, which is still a problem, still an unsolved problem. And so there was, because it was so popular, we pulled it back, but then we sort of solicited RFCs, and there were 4 or 5 competing RFCs aiming at the same design space. And then we had these meetings where we like went over them all in detail and talked about it. And in the end, we took none of them. But it just reminded me of this, that I think there is this, I like this idea of soliciting and sort of, if we decided to try to tackle a problem, like having a project group that is asking for people to submit ideas and then going through them and talking about them. This seems pretty cool. Or just submit problems, but I do think that virtual struct thing, although we took none of them, it was a good, like we explored a lot of space, and if we ever do come back to that problem, we have a much better understanding of it. So custom DSTs, long line of RFCs. I think this is really a recommendation for either defer or project proposal. It's definitely not merge.
I think we need one coherent project proposal here, and we can let the project group evaluate things like, what are the trade-offs between having a new opt-in built-in trait versus having a separate trait versus all sorts of other ways this could be handled. I know we had a half dozen different discussions on this.
So I would say this is not a good fit for our priorities. I'm looking back at our list of when we would solicit a project proposal, and we have small and self-contained or a reasonably good fit for our current priorities. And this seems pretty clearly like taking on a new set of problems to me. So all that means is I think it should be deferred, but eventually be a project group. I don't know when. I feel like we need some kind of till next year, till next roadmap season. When do we think about it? Maybe we want to have a list of like open problems. Like that's more of this LangTeam page I keep talking about. I think part of the reason I would like it is that when we're thinking about what to do next, we should consult it and be like, here were some ideas and some of the summaries. Which of these do we think, are any of these like something that seems like the time is ripe? But multiple attributes in an attribute container, RFC 2600.
I remember this one, and as I recall this, Nico, could I ask you to turn off the recording for a minute, please?
Sure, maybe. If I can figure out how. So, yes. So yeah, I think it's small. I mean, it's definitely a small tweak. I think the major argument against it, for it, is that it's useful. The against it is that it's more syntax, and it's not that useful. uh, basically.
I think the primary argument for is that a number of people kind of already think this works and then get surprised when it doesn't. Like I see people on chat, for example, writing this as a quick note and then realizing, oh, right, that doesn't actually work. And I think because people are used to things like config things where it does tend to work, or derive actually is a really good case where you can write derive trait 1, trait 2, trait 3, trait 4. And this is the kind of thing where the same kind of thing at the top level feels like it ought to work, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I think that plus the fact that we kind of borrowed the syntax from C# more or less, not exactly. Well, certainly our syntax resembles C#, but
Right.
supports it. I don't have a really strong feeling about it myself, but I see the point.
I don't
Yeah.
have a strong feeling about it so much as it's a nice ergonomic improvement.
Right. It doesn't feel like we need a project proposal around this. If we were going to do it, it would either be merge or float with team.
Well,
I'm not quite willing to say I want to merge it, but I don't feel it needs more like design.
it doesn't exactly need design work. The one thing that has to happen before this could be merged is somebody needs to very carefully review the token stream specification for how does this interact with like attribute, proc macro, other attributes. What does it expand to and what tokens does each one get?
Yeah. Honestly, I think that alone makes me inclined to say I think we should defer it. There are some issues and it just doesn't seem worth it. We have enough problems. And revisit it later. Like it's basically a bandwidth. But
I wouldn't object strongly to the notion of we like the concept in principle. The fact that it needs further specification makes us inclined to defer.
yeah, I think that's like I feel like if we opened a project proposal, that's sort of what I would argue for. Is I don't like procedural macros in particular are an area where I feel like we are
Right.
under strengthed, and we need to move carefully, and this doesn't seem worth it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. 2600. So now we're up to 2602, attributes galore. Oh, well. All over the place.
I remember this one. I think this part of the proposal is theoretically syntactic in that, like, we're not specifying yet what the semantics of what these things are. We're saying that you can parse them. And then that would allow a proc macro to deal with them. And then separately, we could spec some of those out. Like this opens the door to being able to say that a function pointer has a repr, or some attribute in some parameter in a closure has a repr, or something along those lines. But for the moment, I believe this is purely for the benefit of proc macros, allow parsing attributes in more places.
Surely this is
I
going
think
to.
we already did something like this for parameters.
Yeah, this will surely introduce a lot of ambiguity that we'll have to settle in one way or another. Maybe it does, but like I don't know, just, I mean, even just this, I guess. Where's a good example? That's not a good example. I'm not sure, but I feel confident that there will be ambiguous cases where it's not clear, is it referring to just the beginning of the thing or the whole thing? But
I can definitely imagine scenarios where it might be like in this position it applies to the lifetime, in this position it applies to the type, and what about implicit lifetimes? It definitely needs some care. I tend to generally be in favor of let's parse a thing and allow proc macros to have fun, but I also completely understand that it will take a lot of work. The thing that makes me mildly inclined is there's all sorts of binding generators and FFI and C++ and similar where it would be really helpful to have attributes nested in the middle of various kinds of types to say, here's something important that you need to know as the binding generator that isn't part of Rust syntax.
so that's true. I guess I would say, so binding generators, maybe like, I could imagine sort of tooling for extended proof tooling or so on.
Right.
All true.
I think my inclination would be similar to the previous one, which is concept seems okay. There are some practical considerations, in this case, ambiguity issues in the grammar. And because of that, we would want to see this come through as a project proposal with somebody who is prepared to put a great deal of grammar work in, but not opposed, kind of mildly in favor, but we want to postpone anyway because complications.
Yeah, those two messages you had there, and I think they're both true. Actually, I think we would want to do it through a project group eventually to see it through, but I also am sort of inclined to postpone right now.
Agreed.
Postpone because complications and enough is because interaction with grammar and procedural macros, two areas were not especially well specified.
Sounds reasonable.
Would want a group to see it through eventually. Okay, and with that, we're at 30 minutes. So I guess we should stop, but wow, we did awesome. We've got
through almost another whole page.
Yeah, page 2. Got another page.
If I might suggest one other that I think we could disposition very quickly, because I think that there's an established project group that should be called into play. 2633 FFI returns twice for specking functions like long jump and, set jump.
Yeah.
We now have an FFI unwind working group that is currently working on the concept of plain old frames and when can you use set jump. I think it's really clear that the correct disposition for FFI returns twice RFC is please work this through the FFI unwind working group, which is actively discussing set jump, long jump, and unwinding right now.
Yeah, in fact,
So I think we should just postpone and say, please take this through FFI unwind.
Okay.
This hasn't actually been commented since 2019, so I think it'll be relevant to call up, hey, this, is being worked on.
Yeah, and Gunzablug has been involved in that, so, although not lately, but.
I'll write a comment on that one.
Oh, I just did.
Oh, you did? Okay. Please go right ahead. Did you RFC bot close, or are you just going to close?
I just closed it.
Okay, that's fine. I don't think you actually closed it.
Maybe you're right. I think it's okay to close though in this particular case.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.